So today, lads, we're reacting to an article on Sports Illustrated titled "Re-signing Kelsey Mitchell is the no-brainer for the Fever." It is the biggest no-brainer. I'm just putting this right now. It is the biggest no-brainer in the history of no-brainers. Because worst case scenario, if she doesn't want to come back or the Fever don't want her back, you sign her and you trade her. You do not let an all-W first-team player walk for nothing. That is the dumbest shit any team can do.
That's the reaction of someone who just read the most absurd take in sports journalism. And honestly, I get it. Because Sports Illustrated just published an article titled "Re-signing Kelsey Mitchell isn't a no-brainer for Fever." Let that sink in for a second. We're talking about an all-WNBA first-team guard who just helped lead Indiana to their best season in franchise history, and apparently there's a legitimate debate about whether to bring her back. The timing here is crucial. Kelsey Mitchell is entering unrestricted free agency after averaging 19.2 points per game alongside Caitlin Clark. The chemistry between them was undeniable. Mitchell spaced the floor, scored without dominating the ball, and gave Clark the secondary weapon she desperately needed. On paper, this should be the easiest decision Kelly Krauskopf makes all offseason. But according to Grant Young's article, the Fever front office should at least consider letting her walk. And before you dismiss this as pure clickbait, the reasoning is actually worth examining, because buried in this argument is a real tension that every WNBA team faces. Do you prioritize fit and chemistry, or do you chase the theoretical upgrade?
When structuring its roster for 2026. Let's zoom back a bit. Every decision Indiana makes revolve around Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston, their two young star players still under contract, along with whether a player fits head coach Stephanie White's schemes and coaching philosophies. Ironically, if that's what it's about, like if it's about head coach Stephanie White's schemes, you trade both Caitlin Clark and the Leah Boston. I mean that when I say that, you definitely trade Caitlin Clark. If you are building a team to fit Stephanie White's schemes, you trade Caitlin Clark. Like, most people re-signing Kelsey Mitchell is the first order of business. Yep, and it is.
Here's where the article actually makes a point worth considering. The defensive concerns around Mitchell aren't fabricated. She's listed as a below-average defender, and when you're building around Caitlin Clark, who herself isn't a defensive stopper, you've got a backcourt that opposing teams can target in the playoffs. But watch how quickly that argument falls apart under scrutiny. Mitchell actually took on the toughest defensive assignments last season. She guarded opposing point guards more than anyone else on that roster, and the numbers don't support this below-average narrative. If you're measuring on a scale where 50% is league average, Mitchell sits comfortably above that line. She's not Kalia Copper or Jackie Young on that end, but she's far from a liability. The real question isn't whether Mitchell is good enough defensively. It's whether Indiana can realistically upgrade that position without sacrificing the offensive chemistry they spent all season building. And that's where this article proposes something interesting. What if Jackie Young or Kalia Copper become available in free agency?
By who? By who? The same people that say Caitlin Clark is the worst defender in the WNBA? Kelsey Mitchell is, no question about it, an above-average on-ball defender. She actually took most teams' point guards last year. Ironically, she's actually played really good defense last year. Truth is, Caitlin Clark is also a below-average defender. Neither of them are below-average defenders. If average is 50th percentile, Kelsey Mitchell's Caitlin Clark is in and around the average. He's in and around a 50th percentile defender. Kelsey Mitchell is a decent chunk over average. There are other free agent shooting guards available, such as Jackie Young, unless she really wants to go, and Phoenix Mercury standout Kalia Copper, who are elite defenders but also offensive threats. Yeah, but never at the same time. Like, that's the biggest problem with Kalia Copper and Jackie Young. When they want to be locked down defenders, they stop scoring. And when they stop scoring, when they have their 30-point games, they stop playing defense. That's the biggest problem is, yes, they can be two-way players.
Now we're getting to the heart of the matter. Jackie Young is objectively a better two-way player than Kelsey Mitchell. She's won 3 championships with the Aces. She can defend at an elite level when locked in, and she brings that secondary playmaking Indiana desperately needs when Clark sits. Kalia Copper offers something different but equally valuable. She's physical, she attacks downhill, she brings that defensive intensity that could transform Indiana's identity. On paper, either player represents an upgrade over Mitchell in specific areas. But here's the problem with this entire thought exercise. It's completely divorced from reality. Jackie Young just won her third championship ring with the Las Vegas Aces. She's playing in a state-of-the-art facility, getting treated like the professional she is, and competing for titles every single season. Why would she leave that situation to join a Fever team that, despite their improvement, still has facility issues and is at least 1 or 2 pieces away from genuine championship contention? The article acknowledges this indirectly when it talks about Indiana's facilities not being up to par with Phoenix or Las Vegas. Until the Fever can offer the same professional environment as those organizations, they're not pulling established stars away from winning situation. That's just the reality of WNBA free agency.
But not at the same time. They can do one or the other. It says here, and they might have the same offensive upside as Mitchell, but defense would make Fever more well-rounded and less reliant on winning games via their shootout. First of all, Kalia Copper is not leaving Phoenix. Until Indiana are able to get their facilities in check, which is not going to happen for next season, you're not going to be able to take any of the players that are in Phoenix because of the way they're being treated as pros. Indiana, they have their own facilities, but they're not great. You're not going to get her out of Phoenix. Jackie Young has won her 3rd championship. Why the fuck would she want to leave the Aces? That's it. And also, if you don't re-sign Kelsey Mitchell and you're banking on getting one of 2 players, there are two players. Ultimately, while it is a no-brainer, it's probably the first and correct choice if Fever sign.
Let's talk about Kalia Copper for a moment, because this scenario is slightly more plausible than Jackie Young. Copper is coming off a season in Phoenix where things didn't go as planned. The Mercury brought her in to be the veteran presence alongside Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, and they flamed out in the first round. But even here, the logic breaks brains. Phoenix can offer Copper something Indiana simply cannot match right now: an established winning culture and professional infrastructure. The Mercury have their own practice facility. They treat their players like the elite athletes they are. And despite the disappointing playoff exit, they're still positioned to compete immediately with that core. What makes this particularly relevant is that Copper, Taurasi, and Griner all started together throughout the season. That was supposed to be their championship trio. It didn't work out, but the foundation is there. Why would Copper abandon that situation to join a Fever team that's still figuring out their identity under a new head coach? And this brings us to the real issue with the Sports Illustrated article. It's proposing that Indiana should consider letting Mitchell walk on the possibility that one of 2 players might want to sign there. That's not strategy. That's gambling with your franchise's future.
Grant Young with a V. Grant Young with a V. All right, let's take a listen here.
Dominance.
There you go.
Fever's best free agency priority. This isn't about who the best guard is on paper. It's about what the Fever actually need next to Caitlin Clark. Indiana's biggest challenge right now isn't talent, it's clarity. Spacing, role definition, and keeping the offense readable. Kelsey Mitchell already gives them that. She spaces the floor, she scores without needing to dominate the ball, and the chemistry with Caitlin Clark is already there. She's not perfect defensively, but sometimes fit isn't about fixing every weakness. It's about protecting your strengths. There's also an organizational reality. Mitchell has been with the Fever her entire career and matters to the locker room and the fan base. Front offices.
This is where the conversation gets interesting, because there's actually a scenario where not bringing Mitchell back makes sense. It's not the one Sports Illustrated proposed, but it's worth examining. If Kalia Copper genuinely wants to come to Indiana in free agency, and if another team is willing to give up significant assets for Mitchell in a sign and trade, then Kelly Krauskopf has to at least consider it. Not because Mitchell isn't good enough, but because the math might work out better long-term. Here's what that could look like. Let's say Copper commits to Indiana. The Fever then core Mitchell, which prevents her from leaving for nothing. They shop her to teams that need a proven scorer and can offer young assets or draft picks in return. Suddenly, you've upgraded your defense with Copper while also stockpiling assets for future moves. The Minnesota Lynx have the 2nd overall pick in the 2025 draft. They need scoring. A sign and trade sending Mitchell to Minnesota for that pick, plus a player like Alyssa Pilley, makes sense for both sides. Indiana gets to choose between Azzi Fudd and Kiki Iriafen, while adding Copper's two-way presence. Minnesota gets a proven scorer to pair with Nafisa Collier. Or consider the Washington Mystics. They're holding the 4th and 9th picks. They desperately need veteran scoring. A package centered around Mitchell could net Indiana one of those picks, plus a young player like Emily Engstler, who's entering restricted free agency and could be had for
you can go and get some younger players. You can go and trade her to the Mystics, who might be willing to part ways with 4-9 and someone like an Emily Engsler on a reserve free agency deal. They might be willing to part ways with something like that. Then that makes sense if you can bring in a like for like and then turn Kelsey Mitchell into lower assets. Or if Jackie wants to come you core and trade and both players get swapped. But at the end of the day, I think this is more devil's advocate, unless there's a situation where they can get way better.
But here's the critical detail that makes this entire debate somewhat pointless. The Indiana Fever have the cap space to sign both Kelsey Mitchell and bring in another max-level player. They don't have to choose. This is what the Sports Illustrated article glosses over. Indiana isn't operating under the same financial constraints as a team like Las Vegas or New York. They can absolutely afford to bring back Mitchell on a competitive deal while also pursuing a free agent like Copper if she's interested. The real question isn't Mitchell versus Copper. It's whether Indiana wants to run a 3-guard lineup with Mitchell, Clark, and potentially Lexi Hull all on the floor together. Can that work defensively? Does Stephanie White's system accommodate that kind of backcourt? And this is where the mention of White's coaching philosophy in the article actually matters. If White wants to implement a system that requires plus defenders at every position, then yes, Mitchell becomes a more complicated fit. But if she's willing to build around Clark's offensive genius and hide defensive limitations through scheme, then Mitchell is absolutely part of that equation.
I absolutely stand by. Like, I'm a YouTuber, I clickbait enough. I don't actually mind this, and I do think the two players he suggested, it makes perfect sense why you would want both of them. It actually makes perfect sense, but I don't think there's a realistic scenario where either of them want to come. But if Copper does want to come to Indiana, and Kelsey Mitchell via core and trade is able to get a whole bunch of young assets to help Indiana long term, you have to at least consider it. You do, because we have to be completely real. The Indiana Fever cannot afford, in 2 years' time, to keep Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Leah Boston. And if delaying the inevitable, if making your team not as good this year and also delaying the inevitable that you might have to get rid of her in 2 years, looked at
Let's cut through all the hypotheticals and get to what's actually going to happen here. The Indiana Fever are going to re-sign Kelsey Mitchell. It's not even a question. Here's why this is the biggest no-brainer in recent WNBA history. Mitchell just made all WNBA first team. She averaged 19.2 points per game on excellent efficiency. Her chemistry with Caitlin Clark is already established and proven. She's been with the organization since 2018 when they drafted her second overall. She matters to the locker room, she matters to the fan base, and she's entering her prime at 28 years old. But even if you ignore all of that, even if you think Mitchell is overrated or the fit isn't perfect, you still bring her back for one simple reason: asset management. You do not let an all-WNBA first-team player walk for nothing. That's organizational malpractice. If the Fever decides 6 months from now that Mitchell doesn't fit Stephanie White's system, fine. They trade her then and get value back. But letting her leave in free agency accomplishes nothing except making your team worse while helping a competitor get better. The article is right about one thing, though. The Fever do have decisions to make about their roster construction. Aaliyah Boston is extension eligible. Lexi Hull needs a new contract. They've got to figure out their front court rotation and whether they're keeping veterans like Erica Wheeler and Kelsey Mitchell long-term. But none of those decisions should involve letting Mitchell walk for nothing. None of them. Think about the message that send. You just had the most successful season in franchise history. You've got Rookie of the Year in Caitlin Clark and an all-WNBA first-team guard in Kelsey Mitchell. You're building momentum, selling out games, generating national attention. And your first major decision is to let one of your two best players leave? That's not being strategic. That's not playing four-dimensional chess. That's just bad management. Now, could there be a scenario where Mitchell doesn't want to come back? Absolutely. Maybe she's tired of being the second option. Maybe she wants to go somewhere she can be the primary scorer. Maybe she's got issues with the organization we don't know about. If that's the case, then you core her and you trade her for assets. You don't just let her walk. The comparison to the situation with Caitlin Clark is instructive here. When Clark was drafted, everyone knew she was going to be the face of the franchise. Mitchell could have demanded a trade, could have complained about losing her touches, could have made it difficult. Instead, she embraced the role, thrived in it, and made first-team All-WNBA, playing alongside the league's most ball-dominant player. That kind of professionalism and adaptability is rare. You don't let that walk out the door. Here's what the Fever should actually do. They should offer Mitchell a competitive contract that reflects her All-WNBA status. Something in the range of 3 years with the third year as a team option. That gives Indiana flexibility while showing Mitchell they value her contribution. Simultaneously, they should be aggressive in pursuing a defensive-minded wing who can help shore up their biggest weakness. Someone like Nafisa Collier would be perfect, but she's not available. Brianna Stewart is locked up in New York. Alyssa Thomas is staying in Connecticut. So you're looking at Tier 2 options like Satu Sabali if Dallas doesn't match, or Brianna Jones if she becomes available. The point is, you don't solve your defensive problems by letting your second-best offensive player leave. You solve them by adding pieces around your core. And make no mistake, Mitchell is part of that core. Clark, Boston, and Mitchell. That's your foundation. Everything else you build around them. The article mentions that Indiana might not be able to afford keeping Mitchell, Hull, Boston, and Clark long-term. That's probably true. In 2 or 3 years, when Boston is due for a max extension and Clark is approaching her next contract, somebody's gonna have to go. But that's a problem for 2027, not 20. Right now, in this moment, you maximize your championship win. You keep your best players together, you add pieces around them, and you compete. You don't preemptively break up a core that just took you to the playoffs for the first time in years. There's also the factor of continuity. The WNBA season is teams that maintain their core and just add pieces around the edges tend to perform better than teams that overhaul their roster every offseason. Look at Las Vegas. Look at Connecticut. Look at New York. The best teams in this league build through continuity, not constant turnover. Indiana finally has something to build on. They've got their franchise player in Clark, their defensive anchor in Boston, and their proven scorer in Mitchell. That's a legitimate big. You don't break that up after one season because of theoretical concerns about defense or hypothetical free agents who might be available. You run it back, you see how it works under Stephanie White's system, and you make adjustments from there. So yes, re-signing Kelsey Mitchell is absolutely a no-brainer. It's the most obvious decision the Fever will make this offseason. And if they somehow mess this up, if they let her walk for nothing or lowball her to the point where she leaves, that's a fireable offense for whoever makes that call. The Indiana Fever are on the verge of something special. They've got a generational talent in Caitlin Clark, a rising star in Aaliyah Boston, and a proven winner in Kelsey Mitchell. The pieces are there, the foundation is set. Now they just need to make the obvious decision and keep this core together. Anything less would be organizational malpractice. So Kelly Krauskopf, if you're watching this, do the right thing. Bring Kelsey Mitchell back, pay her what she's worth. And let's see what this team can really do when they're not figuring each other out for the first time. What do you think? Is Mitchell worth a max contract, or should Indiana explore other options? Let me know in the comments, and if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, because we've got a lot more WNBA content coming your way this offseason.